So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar that is going to talk about transparency in asset management. So my name is Tadeusz Dąbieński, and I'm going to be presenting this webinar to you. And before we start, I just want to have a quick presentation. And so I am working as sales engineer at Analyses since 5 years now. And you have here some contact information if you have any follow-up questions. So in order to maintain today's schedule of 40 minutes, I would ask you to either ask your question through the platform tools during the presentation or by email if you can drop me an email at the address that you can see now. To start here, I'm just going to give you an overview of the program of the day, of the agenda. So first, I'm going to start about the trend of transparency, so explaining how this trend is impacting today the asset management industry. And then we are going to move on to the answers that asset managers can deliver to this trend in terms of digital communication and also other actions, more precise or more defined solutions that they can adapt in order to align themselves with this trend for transparency. Then we are going to see, in terms of tackling this challenge, what are the solutions, how we can answer this challenge within Analyses also. And then finally, we'll end with a business case in portfolio management. So presenting you in detail here and something that is really very concrete in order for you to see how this trend for transparency can be answered within our tools. So, as I said, we are going to start with an overview of this trend. So here we selected two different analyses of the asset management. So you can see one is from Casey Quirk, the other is from KPMG. And the underlying message of both this analysis, both these papers, is that more and more clients of asset managers, they need transparency to understand how their portfolios are managed. So you can see here some buzzwords that are coming back: customization, relationship, client experience, individual experience. So these are the elements that big picture of transparency. The clients that want to be able to understand the portfolio, and we cannot nowadays only have this old way of working where asset managers were sending monthly or semestrally or yearly reports on the portfolio of the clients. They really need to have their hands on how their portfolios are being dealt with by asset managers. So this means that there is the first part of the answer, which is digital communication, which is a trend also in the market. So people are more and more used to this digital communication, not this standard communication that I have been talking about. But the overall purpose of this is to build this trust relationship. So really, the clients of asset managers, they need to increase this trust relationship through different tools, and digital communication with one of them. So this is all related to this global picture of transparency and more information towards the clients of asset managers. But concretely, as I have been talking in the previous slide, we have digital communication, but we are now seeing that this is not the whole answer. So there need to be more than just having digital tools to communicate between the different stakeholders, so mainly the asset managers and the clients. The clients could be seen as institutional clients, but also private clients, family offices, or any other type of people that are trusting asset managers with their investments. So what are these other tools that need to be put in place in order to fulfill this need for transparency? First of all, there is the access to the portfolio in real time. So more and more people are used to have a bigger granularity of timing in terms of consultation or overview of the portfolio. So they need to be able to see daily how their portfolio is managed. And this is related also to the different trends that we see in other parts of the market, like home banking. All these elements make up this need for being able to see on a daily basis how our assets are managed. The second one is more related to this digital communication trend and globally a need for ergonomics. So it's not only what we are disclosing and what we are communicating from asset managers to the clients, but also the way in which we are communicating it, because this is also an important part. As we are overflooded with information, we need to have ergonomics to help us navigate through this information. So this is a second part that is very important here in terms of how we can add elements to the digital communication in order to meet the need for transparency. The third element is the centralization of the information. So it's very important now, as clients have multiple softwares, multiple tools, to be able to centralize the data and to give full access to the client in order for him to pick and choose what is of interest of him, what type of report, what type of analysis, what type of dashboard he wants to consult. This really needs to be centralized in a single access point. And from here, he has the power to select what he wants to see about his portfolio. And in order to achieve that, this is an underlying problem or an underlying need, this variety and quality of the data. As more and more asset managers also tend to personalize or specific approaches to their investment process, they need a lot of data to be able to explain it. And this is something that must be coherent between the way the portfolio is managed and in the way it is reported to the client. So really need this variety and quality of the data in order to be able to meet the needs of the client in terms of understanding his portfolio. And finally, on top of being able to deliver some information to the client. So as you can see, the first 4 boxes here were related to what we are disclosing, what type of report, what type of analysis we provide to the clients. But we also have to be able to give to the client the possibility to create his own, to have his own interactive analysis. So being able to select himself what he wants to see, to be able to create specific slices and dices of the portfolio, drill downs, and this type of elements is increasingly important, as this really empowers the end user in terms of understanding his investments. On top of that, there is something that is global, which is obviously needed in terms of digital communication, is the security. So this is not a need as it might be seen, but it's an underlying necessarily element for clients to be able to trust and to build this trust relationship. We need to have the secured access to the portfolio, being displaying information on the internet and through different platforms means that we need to make sure that the access is secured, that all these necessary elements are put in place here. So then we have seen 2 main elements. So this trend for transparency and to get closer to strengthen the bond between the asset manager and its client, but then also concrete elements that make up this need, as we can see in this slide. So now we are going to move to what the solution can be, and we are going to explain here how Analyses addressed this need and how we address this new trend in the market. So the first element that we did is we developed a client portal, which is a web-based platform in which each client can access his own personalized environment and consult any information on his portfolio or portfolio, should he have many, in terms of reporting, data, holdings, dashboards, and interactive analysis. And we are going to go through that in the last part of the presentation, or the demo of the tool. And this client portal has been built on top of the data warehouse that sources all the data into the client portal. So you can see here that we have encapsulated our analytical engine in our standard reports in order to really give this variety and richness of information to the end user. So this answers already two elements. First, the client portal, which gives a centralized platform with very easy to use ergonomics, and also this central point for all these analyses, the self-service that can be accessed thanks to this very rich data warehouse. This rich data warehouse has been built on top of a centralized database when we are going to collect all the data from the market and the legacy systems. So this really answers the possibility to have this rich and verified information. And this is a central point as we have been building this brick by brick. So making sure that we have a centralized database with quality data on top of which we can provide any analytics, any reports that are going to give a lot of added value to the end user, and then displaying them through this user-friendly client portal. So this is really the logic in order to make sure that we are aligned with all the needs of the market. So now I have been talking in these slides about what we have developed. So now let's move on to the practical part. And I'm going to give you a run through this client portal, and we are going to split it in 3 different parts. So the first part of the presentation will be related to real-time holding. So being able to navigate through the portfolio, choosing your aggregation level or the way you slice your portfolio, and seeing also the last trades and all this information. Then we are going to move on to the part when we are adding more value to the data that is displayed. So being able to access all the different reports in terms of performance, risk, ESG, and attribution, for example. So this is going to be the second part. And finally, the possibility of building on-demand interactive analysis. So here we are switching the paradigm and making the user the creator, and he can decide of what he wants to put in place in his own analysis. So here I'm going to move on and switch to our platform. So as you can see, I'm accessing it directly from a web browser. And then once I log in, I am going to access this platform, my personal environment with my portfolios, my data. So here you can see that we are displaying the information for a balanced portfolio in which we are presenting the holding of the portfolio aggregated regarding the instrument type. You can see here a table with all the instrument types. You can have the graphical presentation of this information here, and also some standard information about the name, the code, eventually the currency or the benchmark if the portfolio has one. So you have all this static information, and then you can choose a different type of aggregation. So for example, here, instead of instrument type, I prefer to see my investment by country. And you can see here that we have all the countries that are represented in the portfolio. And here we have been talking about the balanced portfolio, but I can switch to another example of an equity portfolio. And you can see that every information, whenever I choose a new element, everything is adapted and updated on the fly. And for example, here we have a client equity portfolio, and you can see this split by country, and you can add different levels. So here we have been working with one level, but you can select country, and then as we are in an equity portfolio, we can select, for example, the sector. And you are going to see now that, for example, for Germany, you can see not only the global level, but also the detail sector by sector in terms of percentage of the portfolio invested in the according subparts or subsectors of the market. So here you can go even a level deeper and looking at the different assets that make up these different pockets of the portfolio. So this is very interesting that we really are adapting a top-down approach. So starting from the overall overview of the portfolio with the global presentation, and then going a bit deeper and giving access to detailed information in terms of assets. You can see here that, for example, we have this Henkel share in our portfolio, and we can go and see the evolution of the price of the stock. Here we have it on the last 3 months, but we can select different periods. And for example, if I choose the different 3 years, you can see how the portfolio evolved, how the stock evolved during this time. And we added even the information about the different movements of buy and sell of this security in the portfolio. So you can see, for example, here, the last transaction on this stock was on September 2018, and we can see that we sold more than 14,000 shares of this stock. So here it was the first part when we are being able to see the holdings and then selecting the type of presentation that we want regarding country, regarding instrument type, regarding sector, combining this. And then we can also see this part where we are going to be presented with the last transactions of the portfolio. So you can see the last trades in terms of different categories. So the market trades, buys and sells of stocks on the market, and you can see here that we have our sell of the Henkel asset of the Henkel security in September 2018. Then we have all the cash movements, so the ins and outs of cash in our portfolio, and finally all the corporate actions. So mainly here, as we are in an equity portfolio, is going to be all the dividends that we perceived, but should we have any splits or any rights for some shares, it would all figure in this part. So this really gives the first block of our presentation, so being able to see the holdings in real time and the holdings as well as the trades, so being able to see all this detailed information ex post on our portfolio. So then we are moving to the second block, which is going to talk about reporting. And here we are going to focus on these 2 buttons here. So we have the reports, which are the standard format reports, and then we have the BI, which gives us the possibility to integrate business intelligence tool and present those interactive reports in our client portal. So we are going to start with this part, and we are going to see how these interactive reports give us a lot of added value in terms of understanding the different portfolios that we might have. So here the first element that is interesting is being able to see how all the information is concentrated and is centralized in a single access point. So as I have been saying in the different slides that I showed, that we have built this client portal on top of our data warehouse, which encompasses our analytical engine. And this engine gives us the power to calculate a lot of different functions and to give a lot of different presentations of the portfolios. So you can see here, for example, an equity client report, a compliance report. You have some elements related to ESG, performance, global dashboard, and some elements related to risk. So all the richness of the data and the richness of analytical functions that can be found in our database, in our analytical engine, can be then presented through this client portal. So I'm going to take an example to show you how this interactive reports or this BI reports can be used in terms of understanding the investments of the portfolio. And then we are going to talk more about other types of reports that we can see. So here I chose to start a standard performance dashboard in which you are going to see the interactivity of the presentation, the interactivity of the results that can be achieved using these BI tools. So here you can see that we have very standard presentation with the portfolio and the benchmark performance evolution since the beginning of, here it's April. And then we have a split of the monthly returns of the portfolio, but the benchmark and the excess return. And the user can here select the period for which he wants to display the information. So just by sliding here on the top right corner, we can choose and adapt the presentation of the information here. So you can see that everything is updated on the fly. And we have another element here in which we are going to present the allocation of the portfolio in terms of instrument types. And if the user chooses to see other types of allocation, he has the access to a specific screen where we can present more detailed information about this portfolio. So here we have a heat map with the criteria issuer sector. So in which the size represents the percentage in the portfolio and the color represents the return of each of the sectors that we have invested in this portfolio. So you can see here that the majority of the portfolio has been invested in countries and central governments. Then we have a map here to represent the investments geographically, a repartition by currency, and then the list of all the different securities that make up the portfolio. And here what we are going to have is, thanks to the interactivity of this reporting, we can simply, by clicking here, adapt all the other elements. So we, as I said, the majority of our portfolio has been invested in countries and central government. So we want to focus on our analysis on this subpart, and then we are able to investigate how our portfolio has been created. So for example, here now the countries represent the governments in which we have invested. So if we are interested now in the European governments, we can just select the countries on the map here. And you can see that now we only have two different currencies, euros and Swedish coronas. And then we are highlighting all the different securities that are in our portfolio that are emitted by countries and central governments in Europe. So this really gives you this power to navigate and to understand how your portfolio is made up. So here we have been working at the global level of the portfolio, but we can go into detail, for examples on shares, and you are going to see different presentations for shares. For example, here with a sector allocation of the shares themselves. Then the top 20 shares that we have in our portfolio, another heat map, this time using the industry, so giving a more detailed, more granular presentation of this sector, and then a graph that is going to compare the risk and return of the different securities that make up our portfolio. So for example, here you can see that the majority of the portfolio is invested in the financial sector, and just by clicking on financials, we are going to be able to present the different industry that make up this sector. So diversified financial, banks and insurance, the securities that we have in the portfolio, and then for each of the security, the relationship between the monthly return and the monthly volatility. So it allows really the user to really go into a great deal of precision in terms of information of his portfolio. But here we are going back to one of the central points, which is the trust relationship and the empowerment of the end user. And this is really the tool that allows us to achieve this objective. So if you come back here, and I just wanted to give you another example here, because we have been talking a lot about this richness of information and the variety of information. And here we have been on standard, let's say, performance dashboards with some elements of risk, as we have seen with the volatility, but we are able to construct specific presentational dashboards that are going to combine other types of information. So here, as you are well aware, the ESG sector, the ESG part of the market is growing and growing, and it gives us the possibility to create this type of dashboard. And we are convinced at Analyses that the old way of presenting ESG, where we had on one hand a fact sheet with performance and risk, and on the other hand a fact sheet with ESG, is not going to work anymore, and we are going to see more and more concentration of these two types of presentation into single overall dashboard of the portfolio. So we are really convinced that the integration between the ESG or extra financial information and the financial information is going to be the key in terms of reporting in the next few years in asset management. So this is an example of how this can be achieved. So you can see here that we have some standard elements of return, month to date for the last 3 months and year to date. And then what we are going to do directly is to challenge this financial return and to compare it to the evolution of the ESG score. So we want to make sure that the return that we have has not been achieved by decreasing the ESG performance of our portfolio. And this is the purpose of the second graph. And here you can see that we have the perfect world, as we might say, with both the return and the ESG score that are increasing throughout the whole year. So here I have shown you an example when we are comparing ESG scores and return, but it's important to note here that in terms of ESG, we have a large variety of data and formats of the data. So at Analyses, we are able to work with any data providers and using any ESG metrics that might be found on the market. So we have score here, but we can work with ratings. In the second part, when we're going to compare the repartition of the portfolio and its benchmark. And we can also work with very specific ESG data, such as here the Sustainable Development Goals alignment in terms of allocation in the portfolio. So this is another type of data that can be presented in these reports. So this was just a second example to give you a flavor of the variety of presentations and data that can be found thanks to our analytical tool and then displayed through the client portal. So here we have been talking on this first part of the reporting block in our presentation. So just going back to the second part, which is the standard report. So here, on top of these BI tools, we can integrate very easily all the different reports that might be found on the portfolio. So as you can see here, the user can just go to this report screen and he has the different reports that are available to him, and he can just download them with a simple click and then access all this information. So here, a small side note, so as you are also aware in terms of personalization and user experience, the language can also play a key part. So users want to have reports that are adapted to their language. So here in this example, I have shown you that we can produce the same dashboard, but in 3 different languages. So just like, let's take a while here. So here you can see that it's exactly the same data, the same information that is displayed, but it has been done in French here and in English in this first part. So this is something that could be achieved thanks to our automatic translation that has been put in place in our solution. So then the user can have access to a report that is in his own language. So this is another important part of this personalization and customization. But here we are closing the second block of the demonstration when we have been talking about reporting. So we had the first block on holdings and trades, so seeing the situation of the portfolio, then the possibility to see more advanced information in terms of performance, risk, ESG, through BI tools or standard reports. And then we are moving to the final part of this presentation, which is the My Analytics or interactive analysis that the user can here create for his portfolio. So here, as I said in the first part, we are switching the sides a bit. So in this previous parts, we have been displaying information that has been pre-computed and prepared for the user. And here we give to the user the possibility to create his own analysis, his own dashboards in which he can display his information. So here, once again, is an example of this dashboard. So you can see in this first part, you have a pie that presents the weight of the portfolio by sector. And the user has some tools in order to switch the presentation. So for example, here, just by clicking on this button, we are going to transform this pie into horizontal bars, if it's clearer for him to understand the portfolio. Then we have a table with the market value, the weight, the month-to-date return, and the weekly return. Once again, with sectors, but also with all the assets. So we can just expand this table in order to have a very detailed view with all the returns weekly and monthly for the different titles that are in his portfolio. We have here an evolution of the performance between the portfolio and its benchmark. This is on month-to-date basis. And here we have the possibility to download the data, the underlying data, in an Excel file, and then use it if needed in other tools or for our own analysis. So this is something that is very important. Our platforms, should it be the data warehouse, the analytical engine, or even the client portal, are not black boxes. So we give full access to the underlying information, and people can really easily navigate and find their data in them. So I've been presenting here an overview of the portfolio. We can have specific views of, for example, of ESG, as we have been talking in the BI tool. This is also applicable here for the interactive analysis. So you can see here ratings, scores, compliance with the Global Compact of the United Nations. So this really gives us a lot of possibilities to have our own analysis. So I'm just going to show you an example of how this can be configured and to show you how easy it is to prepare our own analytical view. So here we are at this client equity portfolio. So I'm just going to select the type of data that I want to display. So this, we are going to have a holdings analysis. And then the layout, so we are going to choose two different boxes. And here I want to see in the first box something by sector. I'm going to choose a pie. And here you can select, for example, I want to have the portfolio, the percentage of my portfolio displayed in a pie. So let's say it's a sector pie, for example. And here we want to have another element by country this time, displayed in horizontal bars, and we want the market value. Name it market value bar. Sorry, and then just by saving it, we are going to have a webinar. So, and we have created just like that in a few clicks. Sorry, I just webinar analytics. Okay. So we have just selected here in a few clicks our own visualization, and we can see how it presents within our portfolio. So you can see here the sector pie and the market value bars. And the user has here the last available date, but if he wants, he can select another date for his analysis. So here, for example, let's play it on the end of February. So this is very important. Not only he can create his own analysis, but he can also execute them on demand on a different date in order for him to have this real-time view of his portfolio. So here we are going to present this time the view for another period, and you can see that the portfolio has changed. So this really closes up and ends the demonstration part, or the practical part, the business case part. So we have seen First, the possibility to navigate through the holdings of the portfolio and the transactions. Then, in terms of reporting, we have seen both the interactive reporting using the BI tools and the standard report that can be downloaded on the fly. And finally, this tool that gives us the possibility to create our own analytics and our own views of the portfolio, which are always available here on in the client portal. So just going back to the slides for a quick recap of the session. So what are the main added values of this client portal and how it is aligned with this need for transparency? So first, as you could see throughout this business case, I have been highlighting that we developed it having in mind all the needs of the client. So in terms of centralization of the information, in terms of ergonomics, in terms of easiness to access it. And then we have the second part, which is the cost effectiveness. Indeed, it is an extension of an existing platform that has already all the different information, the data warehouse. So we really are adding a small block on top of that just to display it. And then it is very configurable. So as you could see, we can select the type of data that we want to produce. Whether we want to have some performance analysis, we want some ESG analysis. We can configure also the layouts, the analytics that are available. And finally, it is really easy to implement as it is fully integrated with the rest of our solution. We do not have to create specific communication processes or export the data and re-inject them in a foreign tool. So this is really fully integrated, which allows us to have implementations that are really quick and really efficient. So thank you very much for your attention. If you have any questions, feel free to drop me an email or give me a call, as you have all my contact information. If you want to have more documentation, I would be more than happy to provide you with it. And should you need a more detailed presentation of the tool or some parts that you want to have more examples of, also I would be more than happy to schedule a specific meeting in order to give you this information. So thank you very much and have a nice day.